Support by the Heart and Wellness Institute, caring for you and your family's hearts and well-being. The Heart and Wellness Institute, delivering compassionate, world-class care.
Welcome to WGBU Studio for our discussion on heart disease. We have three outstanding doctors as guests tonight and are ready to take your questions on heart health. The phone number will be on the bottom of the screen, of course, throughout the broadcast. We need your questions. Let me introduce our panel of experts. Welcome to you all. Dr. Prerana Manohar is the medical director and founder of the Heart and Wellness Institute, passionate about focusing on education and prevention of heart disease. There's the P word. Steve Delap, MD, a family medicine provider with obstetrics at Advantage Health Physician Network. Practice is located in their Southwest office at the St. Mary's Healthcare Southwest campus. Dr. Delap has special clinical interest in obstetrics, adult medicine, and heart disease. Greg Miller, MD, well earned, is a cardiologist with Grand River Cardiology, board certified in cardiovascular disease and nuclear cardiology. He's a clinical assistant professor in the Department of Internal Medicine at Michigan State. Boy, I get the best of the best here. Thank you for being here. Leading cause of death, heart disease, as we're hearing, for both men and women. Can you follow up on that, Dr. Manohar?
It is. For both men and women in America, it is the leading cause of heart disease, above the next 13 causes of cancer combined.
Why?
Primarily because I think we need to realize that heart disease is preventable, and we haven't come to that realization yet. And when we do, it won't be anymore.
Dr. Delap, can you follow up on that?
Yeah, particularly when you look at the women associated with heart disease, and it's an important point. It's more than all the cancers combined. I think in 2005, the last time I saw stats, about 450,000 women died of heart disease. When you combine all the cancers, breast cancer, cervical cancer, lung cancer, only about 250 women died of those cancers. And again, it speaks to that we're living longer, disease prevalence is increasing in heart disease, and our lifestyle is playing a significant role in the development of heart disease.
Looks like, Dr. Miller, two factors that are hard to change, obviously, are genetics and age, but it seems like heart disease is fairly preventable.
It's controllable, and I want to make the statement that what we're talking about is atherosclerosis, coronary heart disease, and the third leading killer in this country is stroke, and that also is another manifestation of atherosclerosis.
What are the major risk factors for heart disease, Dr. Manohar?
Some of them have been mentioned in this program already: smoking, high blood pressure, diabetes, metabolic syndrome, poor body composition, physical inactivity, your genes. Some of the things that we don't think of as commonly include stress, anxiety, and depression, which can double the risk of having a heart attack.
Tell me more about stress.
Stress is something that each one of us has in our lives, and so it's important to realize that it is a risk factor. In studies that were done in women, for example, looking at stress, it could increase your risk of heart disease by 1.5 to 2 times. Now, the interesting thing as well is when that stress was controlled, when the perception of stress was decreased, that risk also decreased.
Dr. Delap, can you educate us to cholesterol? Lots of different numbers. We don't need to get too objective, but what's the basic guideline here?
Well, when you look at cholesterol, again, it is broken down in a bunch of different numbers. And I think most people are aware of a couple of types. LDL is most commonly what people hear. That's the quote-unquote bad cholesterol. It stands for low-density lipid. And for most people, we want it to be around 150 or lower. Okay, if you have some risk factors, higher risk factors, we're talking about getting in 100. The higher the number, the greater the association there is with development of plaques in the arteries, which lead to heart disease, coronary artery disease, and also strokes, as Dr. Miller had pointed out.
Great. We have a caller. Hi, caller. What's your question for the experts, please? Welcome.
Hello. My question is there a test that doctors would recommend that women be screened for heart trouble, just like they are screened for breast cancer? You hear so much about women being undetected with heart disease and their symptoms being so different from men, but I never hear about being screened for anything like that.
take that away. Dr. Miller?
Well, that's a very good question. Screening for men and women is somewhat difficult. You start, as Dr. DeLapp said, by looking at all the common risk factors. But I think the caller is asking, how do you go beyond that? How do you go to find out if people have coronary disease that may not have symptoms? And there are different ways that can be done. There's some work being done with ultrasounds of carotid arteries to measure the thickness of the wall. There's a lot being done with CAT scans, CT scanning of the chest to look for calcium depositions. But I don't know, and maybe Dr. Manahar can add to this, that the American Heart Association necessarily recommends any one type of screening beyond the typical risk factors for men or women.
Even though, there is so much that we know, some of this is just really in its frontier and in its infancy, and one of the exciting things that we have to look forward to. But generally, I think there are 3 different categories for evaluation of risk that this caller was interested in. Number 1, yes, do get in and see that primary care provider, such as Dr. DeLapp, to do that regular screening, as Dr. Miller was mentioning. Do get certain risk factors looked at. For example, we talked about risk factors, but one thing that's important is getting some measurements. What is that blood pressure? Discussing that. What is your body mass index? Let's know your numbers. The next step is really that blood testing. So when you get your cholesterol checked, ask your regular doctor or a regular healthcare provider for something called a high sensitivity C-reactive protein. It's one of those biomarkers that have now been found to be associated with risk for heart attack and stroke. And finally, as Dr. Miller was mentioning, there are many diagnostic studies out there looking at the functionality of the lining of the vessels that make a person more predisposed to coronary disease. And soon will be genetic biomarkers as well, some of which are out there already.
Yes. We want to call another call from you. Hi, caller. What's your question, please? Hi, we're ready for your question, please.
Yes. I have a very rare... Hello?
Yes, please continue. Might need to tell...
Autoimmune disease. Yes, I have very rare autoimmune disease, and it includes type 1 diabetes, and I have gastroparesis, which really limits me to any kind of salad or fresh fruits or beans or anything real healthy. I need like canned fruits and carnation instant and things like that. What would you suggest for? And I have the sodium, so I can't exercise very well. What would you suggest for try to keep as healthy as I possibly can?
Yes, there's a scenario. What do you think, Dr. DeLapp?
I mean, she brings up a couple of complicated issues in her question. I think she did mention she has type 1 diabetes, and then she also brought up the issue of canned fruits, whether or not that would be healthy for her. And quite frankly, the answer would probably be no, because of the sugar added to canned fruits. Now, regular fruits would be more than appropriate. I think her biggest risk factor is her type 1 diabetes. That's a huge risk factor for development of heart disease. And she's got to maintain a well-controlled glucose level over time. Her second issue is inability to exercise. It's not an uncommon problem, unfortunately, and you do what you can do. A lot of times we talk about using a pool to help with cardiovascular exercise, and we ask people to introduce that. And many times pool lifts the weight off your knees, off the joints where people can't walk if they can't do well exercise. But again, she really has to put the emphasis on controlling her blood sugars. And as far as her dietary controls, general measures would be avoidance of carbohydrates. A low-carb diet will help control her blood sugars better than a higher-carb diet. And avoidance of, unfortunately, she mentioned the fruit, canned fruit. I'd probably avoid that because there's a lot of sugar in that food product.
All right, great. Thank you.